Language Do's and Don'ts, Part 1. There's this old saying, verbs show, adverbs tell. And this is mostly true. It's not that you're going to get rid of all the adverbs. Obviously, we need adverbs. They're good to have around. But choose your adverbs wisely. Often there's a better choice. And this is particularly true if we want to show the actions of our characters rather than tell the audience what to think. It's also, if we want our writing to feel vibrant and alive, we will use more verbs over adverbs. So I can show you an example. And this seems to be particularly true of ly adverbs. I quickly positioned myself on the slide. That's really boring writing. What if you scooched into place? What if you raced up the slide? Actually, I like scooched better. Anyway, you hear what I'm saying. I quickly changed my clothes. What if I threw my skirt across the room? So these are the things that you can really bring the scene into the viewer's or the reader's mind. When I say I threw my skirt across the room, I bet you got a quick image in your mind rather than I quickly changed my clothes. What clothes? What does quickly really mean? Quickly is such a vague descriptor. Sitting mindlessly staring at the television. Well, what if, I don't know, what if like the ticking of a clock, I plucked the popcorn from the bowl in my lap and pulled the kernels into my mouth. That's not quite right, but you get the idea. Sitting mindlessly staring at the television doesn't really quite cut it. But there are ways to use adverbs that really punch. Witheringly cute, engagingly demented. These are images that pop because they feel unique, they feel new and fresh. Cliches. So let's not use cliches. I was flying blind when I opened the door. They get along swimmingly. Since that first fateful conversation, she made a beeline towards the cushions. I mean, these are things we've heard over and over again. Now listen to this description from Richard Wagamese's One Native Life. My mother is the best bannock baker going. When her bread comes out of the oven, every Indian in the bush comes running. I mean, that paints such an incredible picture. You can just see it. And of course, it looks in your mind ridiculous, but doesn't it create an image? Doesn't it create an impact? So word clutter, as with all writing, we want to reduce word clutter. In literary creative nonfiction, this is especially the case. We want every word to matter. Then I decided that. I remember one night in particular. She always spills coffee grounds all over the counter. She is just so oblivious that she doesn't think. These might be fine in a conversational blog, but they've got no place in literary creative nonfiction. We are really trying to create an impact with our words. So this kind of cluttery writing, this poorly edited writing, just doesn't cut it for us. And then I want you to look at a number of things that, although they have their place, we want to make sure that we're using them judiciously. Often we'll use the verb to be when it is not appropriate. There was a lot to be done. I was being careful. She was just being annoying. Okay, so the verb is, am, was, were. Those are all forms of the verb to be. Now, it's not that you're going to get rid of the verb to be out of your writing, because we need it. A lot of times we need it. But it can make for really bland writing when that's all we're using and we're not thinking about other options. When you see yourself using the verb to be, question your use of that verb. Is there a better choice? Or can you just simplify the sentence and get rid of the verb to be altogether? Dummy subjects, there were a number of ideas. Again, there are times when you'll use there are, or there is, or there was, or there were. But be aware that this is vague writing, and it can really clutter up your writing as well. So use it purposely. Don't use it out of habit. And the same goes for it is, it was. Again, use it purposely, where it is really communicating what you want it to communicate, because it can be a very vague pronoun. What does it really mean? I don't know. It made me angry. What made me angry? It was strange that you didn't answer. What was strange? I don't know. Can be really powerful if you're using it wisely. If you're thinking about its purpose in a sentence and why it should be used, great. But if you're just using it out of habit, avoid it. Now, you can see that we not only have a vague pronoun here, we also have a vague verb. So we're not only using it, we're using a form of the verb to be. So it is, it was, we've got a vague pronoun, and we've got the verb to be. It's really vague writing, so just watch for that. Now, verb form, here's another thing. There are a number of verb forms that you really want to be cautious of. Now, I already mentioned the verb to be, and the infinitive is another verb form that we need in our writing, absolutely, but watch when you're using it. It can make a sentence sound too wordy. It can create distance between the reader and the writer. So, on the other hand, the infinitive can sound reflective, or it can be used to create rhythm within a sentence. So, what are you using the infinitive form of the verb for? Question your usage. My job was to sit on the sidelines making my motherly comments. It's pretty boring writing. I proceeded to raise money for the fundraiser. Or I raised money for the fundraiser. Or I raised $5,000 for the fundraiser. Okay, which one's better? I proceeded to raise money for the fundraiser? Ugh. Yeah, so just, again, watch what words you're using. In this type of writing, I cannot say it enough, every word counts. Choose vibrant verbs. Get can mean to acquire, it can mean to receive, it can mean to earn, it can mean to hear, it can mean to arrive, it can mean to understand. So what does it mean? This is the sign of a word that is used a lot. It's useful, great, but that also means that its meaning is vague to the reader. It's going to be harder to convey an image to the reader if you're using that kind of a word, like get. Instead of get, meaning to acquire, you might want to try gain, or win, or earn, or collect, or purchase, or buy, or grab, or bag, or score, or catch, or gather. Have, meaning to eat. Instead, you might want to use devour, or pick at, or scarf, or imbibe, or demolish. I mean, the difference between devour and pick at is huge. I could say I had my dinner. What if I said I devoured my dinner? Or what if I said I picked at my dinner? These are three very different sentences. Had can also mean to drink. And this is one of the reasons that you want to avoid using have more than you have to in your sentences. So instead of using the verb have to mean drink, what if I said quaff or sip or guzzle or gulp or slurp or chug or swill or swallow or drink? Again, if I could say let's say I had a bottle of Coke. What if I said I quaffed a bottle of Coke? Or what if I said I sipped a bottle of Coke? What if I said I guzzled a bottle of Coke? Do you see how those are all very different sentences? They all more or less mean the same thing. But if I say I had a bottle of Coke, it's just boring writing. Don't do that. Really watch for these common words that don't say much. And then, of course, you also want to watch that you're not overly using the passive voice. Now, again, like all of these things that I've said, there are reasons for using the passive voice. You can use the passive voice if you're trying to emphasize the object of the sentence. You can use the passive voice if the doer of the action isn't important, if the object is important instead. If you don't know who the doer of the action is, you can use passive voice. If you want to project blame away from a character or some other entity, you can use passive voice. But don't use passive voice just because you're not thinking about it. Do not use passive voice just because you're not thinking about it. So as you know, passive voice flips the order of the subject and the object. What is the subject usually? The doer of the action. So if we put the object at the front of the sentence, we have passive voice. It also adds word clutter because to put a sentence into the passive voice always takes more words. So it sounds more awkward and more convoluted. And the meaning is just less clear. The company was founded in 1935 by Alan Lane. Okay, so this is passive voice. The company didn't do anything. It just sat there and got founded. So Alan Lane founded the company in 1935, much more direct. And then, of course, sometimes passive voice is necessary. This is an excerpt from A Promise of Salt. Before your body was found, police had to determine whose blood was in the vehicle. So, why do you suppose the author put the first portion of that statement in passive voice? Well, the author is trying to emphasize the body, not who found it. So, it makes sense to manipulate these things for your purposes.